Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer Maayan Beit Hashoeva. I'd like to share with you a thought of Rosh Hashanah on Parshas Noach. Actually, we're nearing the end of our yearly cycle of a study of a different Sefer on the Parsha. We've studied a few Sfarim already, and this year we've been studying Maayan Beit Hashoeva. Every year we restart the cycle on Parshas Vayera. So we did Or Gedalia for a year, we did Nesir Shalom for a year, and now we've been doing Maayan Beit Hashoeva. So this is the second to last week of Maayan Beit Hashoeva, and 2 weeks from now, Mirza Hashem, so I'll surprise you with a new sefer that we will begin. But for now, let me share with you this idea from Schwab. Parsha opens, Eila told us, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'dorosav, that Noach was ish tzadik tamim, he was a righteous man, he was a complete man, b'dorosav, in his generations. And Rashi, quoting from Chazal, from Midrashim, Gemara and Sanhedrin, famously quotes the Machlokas Chazal about how to read this pasuk. The qualifier of Bidorosav, in his generations, is either Lignai or Lishvach. Either it's a criticism of Noach that he was only a Tzaddik Tamim in his generation, or it's Lishvach, that even in his generation, which was filled with Hamas, which had to be destroyed, even there he was able to rise to the level of being a Tzaddik Tamim. So he quotes that Rashi, Bidorosav, Yesh Rabusenu Dorshim Oso Lishvach, then maybe it's a compliment to him that if even in his generation he was able to rise to be a tzaddik tamim, so all the more so in another generation, a generation that was better behaved, a generation of more morality, he could have risen to be the greatest superstar known to man. V'yesh dorshim l'gnai, and some people read bidorosav in a negative fashion as a criticism of Noach. Lefidoro hayat tzaddik, in his generation, was considered to be a tzaddik. Didn't take much to be a tzaddik in his generation. Vilo hayat b'doro shel Avram lo haya nechshav l'klum. If he had been born in the generation of Avram Avinu was a generation of greater morality. Avram Avinu himself and Sarah Imenu were superstars in their own right. They were tzaddikim. They were great righteous people. If he had been born in that generation, he would have been a nothing, absolutely a nothing. V'tzarich biur. And he says, like everyone else says on this medrash, it's the most discussed medrash from Parshas Noach. This is like everybody else to ask. Tzarich biur ech efshar lomar shebedor shel Avram lo haya nechshav l'klum. So everyone has a different angle how to analyze this medrash. It's Rashi. He comes in with a very interesting, very narrow and particular question, but his answer will be a little bit broader and help us to understand the character of Noach and understand this Rashi as well. So he narrows in a very small question. In the side of Rashi, or the side of Chazal, that are dorshim oso lignai, that see bidorosav as a criticism, they say that if he had been in the door of Avram Avinu, he would have been nothing. So the question he asks is, why does the Chazal compare him to nothing? Harei HaTorah me'ida alav sheyat tzadik tamim. Gam mimenu hushtat ha'olam mechadash. Va'af im lo higia lemadregas Avram, ha'ri b'vada yesh chashivus l'tzadik kazeh. It could have said dorshim oso lignai. Could have said it's a criticism. It's b'dorosav that he rose to be so great, so different, so incredible. But if he had been in another generation that had been higher level, so he wouldn't have been as great, or he wouldn't have been as great as Avram Avinu. But to say that he would have been nothing in the generation of Avram Avinu is a very hard thing to say. The pasuk qualifies him objectively. Tzaddik tamim haya. He was a tzaddik tamim, certainly filled with certain qualifications to be a tzaddik. He followed the directives of Hashem. From him, the whole world was born. He certainly had some merits. He may not have been as great in the door of Avram Avinu, but he wouldn't have been nothing. Why does it compare him to nothing? He would have been liklum in the generation of Avram. Odi yishlayin belashon lefidoro hayat tzadik shemashmesh tzidkaso haisa miyuchedes umatima lamatzav shel oso ador dafka tzarich biur. In addition, he says, the language that the Medrash uses, liyesh dorshim l'gai lefi doro hayat tzadik, that according to his generation, not in his generation, but according to his generation, somehow the insight that Rav Schwab is going for over here has to do with that second question. The second question implies that there was something unique, not just to the fact that he was a tzaddik in a bad generation, but that his tzidkus, his righteousness, somehow was particularly applicable or particularly relevant to his generation, And if he were in another generation, it wouldn't have been relevant at all. It would have been liklum. So that the whole medrash, Dor Shemaso Lignai, the criticism of Noah, is nothing to do with objectively whether he was a tzaddik or not, and in a different generation whether he would have been considered a tzaddik or a nothing, but specifically that his kind of tzidkus was lefi Dora, was matching his generation. And if he had been in another generation, Avraham Avinu, it's not that he wouldn't have been a tzaddik, it's that the relevance of his tzidkus, of his form of righteousness, would have been liklum. It wouldn't have been relevant in the generation. It would have been nothing, useless. But it was useful lefidoro, in his generation in specific. So that the comparison of him in his generation to him in Avram's generation, of the Medrash, of the Rashi, has nothing to do with whether he would be a tzaddik in that generation, but whether the type of tzidkus that he has would have been relevant. And now he explains what that type of tzidkus was and why it wouldn't have been relevant in the time of Avram. ובאמס כאן הבן שואל איך ייתכן שחי צדיק תמים שיש מאה שנה אדם מבול ולא השפיע על אף אחד מבני דורו שיכנס תחת כנפי השכינה. You have to ask another question on the Noah story. How did a person stay alive for 600 years until the Mabul and never influence anybody in his generation to come closer to Hashem? וגם עסק בבניין הטבע 120 שנה ואף אחד לא היטיב מעשיו. 120 years he built the Teva with the express purpose of causing people to question it and causing people to question what was going on around them and inspire them to tshuva. Not one person that we know of was inspired to tshuva, to change their ways. Because in the end we find only Noach and his family into the Teva. If anybody else is mechuzer b'tshuva, perhaps Hashem would have allowed them on the Teva as well. רואים אנו מזה שהגם שהיה נוח צדיק תמים מכל מקום לא היה עוסק בעבודת קירוב רחוקים לפרסם לכל בני האדם שהיה מנהיג לבירה. As much as he was a tzaddik, we see that Noach was not a tzaddik who went out of himself in order to bring other people closer. That was not his trait, to go and popularize the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, to popularize the idea, as Rosh Schwab here paraphrases the Medrash of Avraham Avinu's discovery of Hashem, sheyesh manhig labira, that there is an owner to the world, that there's a balabais to the world, that there's a God that directs the world's events. He doesn't go and publicize that. He was a great tzaddik, and he could have influenced. If he had decided to go out of himself and to influence those around him, he would have made an impact, and others would have come closer. V'zeu kavanas Rashi, lefi doro haya tzaddik. Pirush, Kimo shesharan shehadorahu lo hayu niskakim klal tzarchei azulas, kmo chen Noach hayta itzdanuso, ba'avodaso kisha le'atzmo, ela shebnei doro hayu lo atimachar devar gashvim, v'hu asak b'kinyanim ruchanim. He says, lefi doro in Rashi here means that his form of righteousness matched the trait of the generation. The trait of the generation is that no one cared about each other. No one went out of themselves to care for each other. It was the war, it was the Hobbesian state of affairs, the war of all against all, no form of justice, no form of property. Malah aretz chamas, lo nechtam zardinam ela ala gezel. Gezel, the ultimate form of the breach of the boundaries between people, was what filled the world. People didn't expect anything from each other. People didn't respect anything about each other. People didn't have boundaries between them and each other. It was all about themselves. Generation solely focused on the self. And so Noach in that generation was a tzaddik, but a tzaddik lefidoro, a tzaddik in the same form as the generation. He adopted that trait as well. He only thought about himself. It's just the only difference is that everyone else thought about only themselves in terms of gashmios, whereas Noach thought only about himself in terms of ruchnios. He didn't go and steal from people and hurt people and breach the boundaries between people on the level of gashmios. But he did focus only on himself, just like the rest of the generation, in terms of his righteousness, building his own righteousness, building his own connection to Hashem, building his own safeguard to save himself in the world, but not going out of himself to share that with others, just like the people of his generation, but not in terms of the same effect, not in terms of gashmius, but in terms of ruchnius. Just like the trait of his generation who didn't influence others, so too was the trait of his tzidkus. They took rishus in that direction. he took tzidkus in that direction, but they shared the same underlying trait. That's what it means when Rashi says that the Gnai, Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya B'Dorosav, he was a tzaddik in his generation. The Gnai, the criticism, according to Chazal, of Noach in this pasuk, is not that he wasn't a great tzaddik and that he only appeared to be a tzaddik because he was in a bad generation. No, it was a critique of the type of tzidkus that he adopted. He adopted the tzidkus that was lefi doro, that was appropriate in his generation. The generation of selfishness, he appropriated that trait, but then directed it in terms of his tzidkus, his righteousness, that it was all for himself rather than for others. ולכן אמרו רבותינו שבדור של אברהם שהייתה עבודה לקרוא בשם השם, להכיל ולהשקוס כל העוברים בשווה, ללמדם דיה, להכניסם תחת כנפי השכינה, כדכתיב אס הנפש שעשו בחרן. אז לא היה נוח נחשב לכלום, שהרי לא קירב אף אחד לעבודת הבורא יסברך. In the generation of Avram, the whole trait of religiosity and righteousness was likro b'shem Hashem, to go out to the world and call out in the name of Hashem, as Avram Avinu did, which the whole trait of his generation was to build an eshel, to feed people who were passing by, and to give them a drink, and to give them shelter, so maybe you could teach them something about avodas Hashem. It was all external, it was all reaching out to other people, as we see v'anefesh asher asu becharan. Avram giras hanashim, Sarah giras hanashim, that they went out to convert people. They went out of themselves to bring the Torah, the morality, the monotheism, whatever you want to call it, to the outside world, to other people. And therefore, yes, would Noah have been in their generation, his tzidkus would have amounted to nothing. Liklum. That's why the Medrash uses the word liklum. We understand that the critique of Lefidora was not because he wasn't great enough to be considered anything in the door of Avram, but that his tzidkus type was what was critiqued, because it was a selfish tzidkus type. Then we understand the end of the Medrash, that if he had been in the door of Avram, his tzidkus would have been klum. Not because he was a worthless individual, he was a tzaddik tamim, of course, but his tzidkus would have been irrelevant in that generation, because that generation was about reaching out, and his tzidkus would have been about reaching in. He would have amounted klum, to nothing. He wouldn't have accomplished anything in that generation. Ve'ilu yesh lefarish, ve'ulai yesh lefarish, b'zeh ma she'amru Chazal. Maybe we could understand through this the words of Chazal and Gemara and Sanhedrin. Afal Noach nechtach gzardin, ela shematza chen, shene'amar nichamti ki asisim, ve'Noach matza chen be'enai, shenechtach alav ha'gzardin, shegam hu yeh nispas ba'avan ador, shegam hu lo niskak la'azulas, ela shematza chen. The Gemara makes a strange statement that the Gizardin of the generation was nechtach even on Noah, that it was passed even on Noah, but he was motzei chen b'nei Hashem because he found favor in the eyes of God, so he was saved. Learns it from the pasuk Parshat Noach, nichamti ki asisim, v'Noach matza chen b'nei Hashem. He regretted making the world, so he destroyed it, but Noach matza chen. He regretted making the world had a gzardin against it, including Noach. But Noach was matzachin, so he was saved. That again reinforces where Schwab says the same idea. That Noach was nechtach b'gzardin hador. He was part of the whole generation's problem. It's just that he channeled that trait of selfishness for such a positive, beautiful reason of kirva la'Hashem, closeness to God. So God couldn't help but motzechen be'inei Hashem, couldn't help but find favor in the eyes of God. God loved it. It was close to him. But in the end of the day, it could have been pretty bad. Noach was no different than the rest of the generation in terms of their actual trait, in terms of the manifestation of their behaviors. It's just that the behaviors of the generation were bad and the behaviors of Noach were good. But the trait, the characteristic of it, the selfishness of it was something he shared with everyone else. We should all think about very carefully how it is that we take our own righteousness, our own good deeds, our own mitzvahs, our own Torah, our own avodas Hashem, and try to channel that to be able to influence others for the positive as well. Shabbat Shalom.